Yeah. So this is my round 6 game, but my 5th game because I had a rest day and I played today on Sunday. It was Wales versus Denmark. We were outgraded on pretty much every single board. In fact, their board 4 was higher graded than our board 1, which just shows how strong their team is. And also their team was a little bit younger than us as well, which was a bit worrying. But anyway, I played a guy called bekker Jensen. He was an IM, rated 2482. I was black. And I just want to take you through the game now and just show you what the key points of it were. So I already knew that from his previous games that I looked up that he was going to be a D4 player. And I prepared to play the King's Indian, which I've been playing recently. And I saw that he played this move 5H3 beforehand. It's called the Mahaganov. It's meant to be really restrictive. I might even play as the white side of this myself. So I'd be very happy to go into this. And previously played Bishop E3 here, which is this move here. And he played Bishop G5, which was a little bit different. So I kind of looked at this move beforehand, but I hadn't really studied the line. So I knew that I could play Queen E8 here, which is supposed to be a good move. I remember a good game being played with it, but I don't really know what else or what actually happened in the game. So from here on in, I'm pretty much by myself. But I know the general ideas. He continued knight f3, and I get my pawn in the centre of the board, trying to claim some space. And normally here, 9 times out of 10, white plays d5 and blocks up the centre. I try and move like a knight round to either here and then into a6, then to c5. It could come via this square here on d7. But what I'll probably try and do is get my knight out of the way and then push my f-pawn forward to start breaking open this centre as quickly as possible. And he surprised me. I don't know if this was his prep. I guess I should feel honoured if he prepped for me. But he decided to take the pawn, which is something where I started to think, have I actually made a mistake and am I going to lose in like 10 moves here? Because there's some dodgy lines. So after pawn takes pawn, I mean, I started to have nightmares that he could do something like bishop takes knight, bishop takes bishop, knight d5, and then I'd have to play bishop d8 because there would have been a double attack on those two pieces. So yeah, I was a bit scared at that point. Have I gone majorly wrong already? But thankfully I hadn't, and he didn't do that, and I couldn't see a way for him to get an advantage there. He did continue though, first of all, by playing knight d5, which again is a double attack on 2 pieces, so therefore I got to take it. And he takes back with a c-pawn, and I think if I, in this position, just do nothing and just start to develop, like moving this knight out and moving this bishop out, I'm going to be in a lot of trouble, because all he's going to do is play his rook to c1, obviously get his bishop out, let's say it just goes to there, get himself castled, and then he's just going to pile everything on this c7 pawn here. And I've got no space, and it's going to be very difficult for me to play the game. So I realised that I had to do something pretty quickly to break open, or to try and exchange these 2 pawns in the centre of the board. So I played c6. He defends it with his bishop, and now he is threatening things like kind of ideas such as d6, and I had to be very careful of this, because after d6 he's then can follow it up with bishop e7 and my rook's trapped in, and I'd lose the exchange. And then this bishop here is also very powerful along this diagonal, pinning my my pawn to my king. So actually there's some lines where he plays his knight to g5 and then onto the f7 pawn. So I was a little bit concerned at this point. I was completely out of theory. I looked later on when I got back, and this position has been played quite a few times before, only a handful. But I didn't know that at the time, so I was a bit concerned about whether I was just going to be massively deep behind in development here. He's got 3 pieces out, and this bishop's actually a massive pain, because it's tying my bishop down to defending this pawn, and also I can't move my f pawn either at the moment, so I'd have to move my king first before I can move it forward. So I was a bit concerned that I was not getting very active play, and so I decided to try and create some mischief with my queen. So I'm stopping him castling, I'm attacking the b2 pawn, I'm just trying to create some threats. First of all, it also gives my rook some breathing space, because beforehand there's some lines where his bishop can retreat to here and then onto c5, and my rook again is trapped in, and I'll lose the exchange. So queen b5, I'm just trying to seek some active play, trying to get I don't know, some sort. He might let me take on b2 perhaps, and then I'll play a pawn up and try and keep it. But he played queen e2, defends the pawn, offers to swap off of queens. I don't want to trade just straight away because then it brings his rooks into the game after the queen takes queen, king takes queen. So I check first. He blocks with the queen, which he might have had different options there. And then I played knight a6. And before playing this, I had to have seen what happens after queen takes queen, knight takes queen, bishop e7. I originally thought that actually knight c2 was not very good, just because of king d2, knight takes rook, bishop takes rook down here, king takes, and then rook takes knight. And I thought they had like ideas like knight g5, hitting this pawn and this pawn, but I now see that I had bishop h6. However, I wouldn't have played that because I probably didn't analyse that quite perfectly. I would have played knight d3 check, and when wherever his king goes, so I've got different options. So if he goes to e2, it's just dead easy. I just play knight here check, and then I play my rook to e8. Whereas if he plays king d2, and then just play rook to e8 now, and after he takes my knight, I take his bishop, I'm actually doing really well in this game because I've got the two bishops against the bishop and knight, but also my rook on e7 covers this c7 square, which is where he was potentially going to invade, and actually that's where he does invade in the game. So yeah, I would have been very happy if we got to this position. Yeah, I had to have seen this. So that's probably why all the way back here he probably doesn't take my queen, and he actually castles. But now I've got a problem because there's this tension between the two queens. Who's going to take who? He is kind of threatening to take me and then play his bishop to the c7 square, attacking both the rook and whatever piece of my knight lies there. So I decide to take the queen. He does knight takes, and I play knight to c7. Again, the whole idea of my play has been to attack this bishop on d5. I need to get rid of it. It's absolutely crippling me at the moment. It has been for quite a few moves. And actually, I kind of realised that actually I'm probably gaining the pawn unless he moves it. Because if he brings it backwards, say to b3 or even c4, then because my knight's on c7, I've actually got my knight and my bishop both capable of coming to e6, and all of a sudden my knight starts to become an absolute monster because I mean, let's just have a quick look. I mean, for example, I could play knight e6, and let's suppose he just retreats, but then I could follow it up with knight d4 if I want to, and all of a sudden my knight's in the centre of the board. It's a beautiful piece, and he's probably going to have to do either bishop takes knight or let me take this bishop off, and just to get rid of it. So I don't think he has too much choice there to retreat the bishop. So he continued with rook ac1, and I realised I was going to win a pawn at this point because I take the bishop and then I play f6, which is a key move. His bishop's got to go back to e3 to keep it within the game, and it also eyes up the a7 pawn. And then I just play rook d8, and there's no good way for him to defend this pawn on d5. Rook c5 isn't very good. I could just play bishop f8 or b6, and it's he hasn't got any rest on the b5 square because I've got this light squared bishop here. Oops, shouldn't have clicked that. So rook d8, there's no point in defending it, but there is a good point in going to the 7th rank because we all know the story about what happens when rooks get to the 7th. So I started to be a little concerned at this point and had a really good think. I was looking at playing just b6 here and then taking the pawn afterwards. I mean, he'd probably play something along the lines of rook c1, so therefore I can't take the pawn because of this bishop. But then I move my bishop out, but then I thought he might go g4, and then my bishop goes to d3, but then I thought he might go rook e7, rook takes pawn, and then I allow him to double on the 7th, and I play bishop f8 or h8. I can't remember which one I was actually thinking of where to retreat my bishop to. I think I'm okay though because I've actually got a nice little, because even if he takes this, I can still just play g5 and my bishop actually covers back on the diagonal. So he's got no mating threats, but it's just a bit of a dodgy position that I wasn't really too happy with. I think there's a better continuation for him that I saw in the game. After b6, I think he might just be able to... Oh, that's it. I was worried about knight c4, and then actually him doing bishop takes pawn b6. Don't know how well that is. So what was it? b6, knight c4, rook takes pawn, and then bishop takes here. Pawn takes, knight takes pawn. Maybe this is okay for me. Maybe it's not too bad. But He didn't do. I didn't play b6. I decided just to capture the pawn straight away because I saw that after rook c1 first of all because he's attacking the bishop. I don't want to move my bishop because I'll lose the b7 pawn, so therefore I just bring my rook back. And after knight e4, I couldn't see a concrete way for him to actually break me down. I saw that he could win like these 2 pawns, but I couldn't see any kind of mate threats over here because he's kind of got like a knight f6 idea with a bishop h6 thing going on, maybe even rook e7 and doubling up rooks on the 7th rank, but it just doesn't quite work for him. I play bishop f5, obviously attacking the knight, gaining a tempo, which is quite good. Knight goes back to g3. And obviously he's attacking my bishop and he's going to double my pawns on the f-file, but I'm also going to lose this b7 pawn at some point. So I played b6 here to keep my pawn, takes my bishop, pawn takes, and I started to see the endgames arising already from this point. From probably a couple of moves ago, I could see that I was losing these 2 pawns, but I was definitely going to get at least one of these. And he might have a rook and pawn against rook ending, and we might have the bishops included with that. And I definitely want the bishops off the board in that case, because the bishop will help support whichever pawn he's left with to come down the board. So I really must get the bishops swapped off at the same time. I've got quite a nice threat actually by playing b6, is that I'm going to play f4, and this bishop's got no space actually, and it's actually 1 because d2 is covered by my rook. So he plays g3 first of all. Then I start to realise that he's got quite a lot of pressure on my position, and if I'm not careful, he is just going to play this rook down to here. He's going to keep me pinned down to defending the f6 pawn, keep me pinned down to defending the a7 pawn, but that's only 2 of my pieces that are pinned down, so I've still got this rook which I can move around with some freedom. But he might be able to work his king in somehow, maybe get these pawns going down with something maybe like a4, a5, and if he did something like that, I was planning just to take it, and even if he does win my 2 pawns, he's only got 1 pawn coming down at me, so I know that a lot of those endgames can be drawn. So I was quite happy at this point, and I kind of saw what endgame was about to come up by when I played bishop f8. I knew that he'd go rook b7, I'd offer the trade of rooks, he'd take to win the pawn, and then I was planning to play a few moves ago, possibly playing rook c2, but I was just a little bit concerned because after bishop takes pawn, rook takes pawn, attacking the bishop, he can move the bishop now. That's it. Bishop d8 was quite an annoying move. I looked at some silly kind of ideas like rook a3 and then bishop a3 to try and get the bishops off. So if he takes my bishop, I take his bishop. But it doesn't actually work because even though my bishop now blocks his rook from defending the pawn, I can't actually take the pawn. So let's suppose that he does a silly move like king here. I just do rook takes pawn and he just plays bishop c5 and he wins my bishop anyway. So I just completely counted that out. That's not going to be the best way to do things, and I've got to go for bishop c5 first in order to try and draw this. Because even though it's equal on pawns, he's got the outside pass pawn here. He's going to get he's going to exchange one of these for this one, and I'm going to be the one trying to draw. So bishop c5, he takes it. I take back with the pawn, which I think is right. And I think he's thinking that he has potentially got a win here, but I don't think he has. The idea is that I am going to, as quickly as I can, swap off this pawn for this pawn, and then get my rook to this square on a1, and then I'm just going to try and trap the king in, and that's what happens. So rook b7, he's just making way for his a pawn, c4, a4, c3, he's got to take it, otherwise I push on to queen, takes, a5, get your rook behind the pawn, that's the best square for it. If it's behind, or not square, the best area for it is behind the pawn, so he would really ideally want his rook where my rook is, or anywhere here, supporting it going forward. So now my rook's doing 2 jobs, because after rook a7 I'm attacking the pawn, but I'm also covering all these squares going this way as well. And then after rook a1, it's just a dead draw now because he plays king g2, which he has to, and then e4, and he can't make any progress at all because he can't get his king out. He can't come forward. I'll just show you how it looks in a couple of moves. So again, he can't come forwards. His king can't even go backwards. If he tries to do something like, well, it's my move now, I'll play king h8, tries to do something like f3, then I've just got rook check. And that's nice and easy. If he does something like f4, rook check, and when the pawn doesn't work because I'm silently lost the move, but actually I can just do rook check because his king can never really trouble me too much because I've got pass pawn myself now. So it was around here that I nearly did actually have a heart attack. Okay, that's a bit of an exaggeration because I played king h8, he played rook a8 check, and then I played king g7 very quickly. And then after a7, king h7, I realised that he actually had a move just to prolong the agony a little bit more and play rook f8. But I saw this coming. I can just take the pawn. He takes my pawn. Play rook a5. I'm defending the pawn. He tries to get his king out, attack his rook, and then he offered me the draw because I'm just going to put my rook here. And if he ever gets his rook to block it, I just bring my rook back to a3, and he can't ever get his king forward any further. And my king will just defend these pawns when they're attacked. And that's it, really. So yeah, I was really happy with the draw. And another draw with black against a high-rated player. He's an IM, so yeah, very happy. The team unfortunately lost 3.5. There were some great games all round. And I don't know who we've got tomorrow yet, but yeah, you can tune in on, I think it's Chess 24. It's UK time around midday. Apart from that, thanks very much for watching. If you like the video, then give it a thumbs up.